Hey guys, welcome back to GX Stories Sleeping. Tonight we're clattering through the dim, crooked streets of revolutionary Paris together. The evening air is thick with wood smoke and sour wine breath, and your bare feet sting against the cold planks of a rattling tumbrel cart. The wheels grind over stones, jostling you so hard that your teeth clack. You glance to your left and see a young man clutching a rosary. To your right, an old woman mutters half-finished prayers. Ahead, the rising silhouette of the guillotine looms under a smudge pink dawn. You probably won't survive this ride. Literally. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The cart jolts again, sending the rusted iron shackles around your wrists clinking against the wooden rail. You feel every splinter digging into your palms as you grip the side for balance. Some part of you notices a faint whiff of sewage mixed with rotting straw. Paris smells like revolution, yes, but also like chamber pots emptied into alleys. A mainstream historical fact is that these tumbrels, or charrettes, carry dozens of people each day to their deaths during the height of the terror. Often built so cheaply that prisoners got splinters and bruises before their execution even began. Your cart rolls past silent onlookers gathered along Rue Saint-Honoré. Nobody cheers. Their eyes are wide and sunken with weeks of fear and stale bread crusts. You catch a whiff of fried onions from a nearby stall, and your stomach gnaws at itself in quiet betrayal. Some fringe historians note that a few compassionate Parisians would toss apples or bread crusts into tumbrels out of pity, though whether guards let you keep them is still an open, scholarly debate. A child, maybe 8 years old, holds her mother's hand and points at you with curious eyes. Your hair is greasy from prison damp, clumped in oily curls against your neck. You feel a sudden shame, worrying about how you look even now, as if public embarrassment is somehow worse than death. The cart hits a pothole so deep your knees buckle and you nearly topple forward onto a bald man's back. He turns and gives you a tight, apologetic smile, though you're both beyond apologies. You try to focus on something small and harmless, so you watch a little sparrow hopping along a roofline above. It ruffles its feathers against the cool dawn breeze and pecks at a crumb. For a moment, you imagine its bright bird brain knows nothing of kings or mobs or guillotines. It just lives and eats and flutters. You wonder if you'll see another bird again, then scold yourself for hoping. The wheels grind to a halt at the Place de la Révolution. You see the tall, dark frame of the guillotine standing stark against the hazy sky, wood still damp with yesterday's rain and blood. A man to your left retches dryly, but nothing comes up. Your wrists tremble against the iron cuffs as guards begin unlatching prisoners one by one. The cart creaks as it empties, leaving behind the faint warmth of frightened bodies. You stand shakily, heart hammering like a smith's mallet against your ribs. The guards shout for order, dragging you out by your elbow. The earth feels so solid beneath your feet after the rattling tumbrel that for a brief delusional moment, you imagine you've been set free to walk home. But the roaring rush of blood in your ears reminds you, your journey is only half finished, and the blade waits patiently ahead. Your bare feet slap down onto the slick cobblestones as the guards herd you away from the guillotine. Not yet, they tell you gruffly. Your paperwork isn't final. You're shoved back into another cart and rattled across town, this time toward a low stone building with barred windows and the smell of rot wafting through its broken shutters. This is your new home for now, a revolutionary prison. You step into the dim stone corridor and the first breath nearly gags you. Damp straw, old urine, mildew, and the bitter tang of despair clog the stale air. The jailer eyes you with bored contempt before slamming the iron door behind your back. Inside, bodies lie pressed together across the floor on matted piles of straw. Lice scuttle along the edges of a blanket that's more whole than fabric. You find a small patch of floor by a dripping wall and lower yourself down carefully, feeling the damp soak into your linen trousers. Your cellmates don't look up. They're too busy picking lice from each other's hair or muttering silent prayers into filthy sleeves. A mainstream historical fact is that these prisons, like La Conciergerie or Saint-Lazare, were so overcrowded during the terror that hundreds of prisoners slept shoulder to shoulder unable to stretch out fully for weeks. The straw bedding was rarely changed. Prisoners often arrived clean and healthy, but within days developed rashes, lice infestations, and festering sores from the damp. Your eyes adjust to the murky glow of a single tallow candle stub wedged into a crack in the wall. Drips of wax form little white towers along the stone, ghostly stalagmites in this sunless cavern. The candle flickers with every draft, threatening to snuff out and plunge you into complete darkness. You hug your knees tighter to your chest, feeling the straw poke through your trousers, 100 needling pinpricks. A woman in the corner hums quietly to herself, a lilting tune about roses in summer. Her hair is tangled into gray ropes, and she clutches a small rag doll, its fabric face rubbed blank by years of comforting hands. A quirky fringe tidbit is that prisoners often created little charms or rag dolls from scraps of their clothes, both as talismans against execution and as final gifts for family they'd never see again. A rat scuttles along the far wall, pausing to nibble on something unidentifiable in the shadows. You watch its whiskers twitch and wonder if it carries news from the outside world in its tiny pink paws. Some part of your exhausted mind begins to drift into half sleep, despite the stone pressing into your hips. You almost welcome the oblivion, until a sudden scream echoes from down the corridor. Another prisoner's name has been called for trial at dawn. An open scholarly debate lingers over whether these pre-execution trials were genuine legal hearings or mere formalities to justify death sentences already written on secret lists. Many historians argue the Revolutionary Tribunal functioned purely as a tool of state terror, rubber-stamping executions to maintain public fear. You force your eyes shut, pressing your forehead to your knees, but sleep is slippery here. Someone nearby begins coughing, a raw hacking sound that rattles their ribs and ends in a wheeze. You hope you don't catch it. Not that you'll survive long enough for infection to finish you off, but misery always finds time to spread. The cell smells of unwashed bodies, wet straw, and sour breath. Your stomach growls softly. You've eaten only a crust of stale bread and a thin smear of rancid cheese today, washed down with water that tasted faintly of iron. As you drift in and out of shallow dreams, the straw poking your cheek feels like needles, and you imagine lying in a field at home instead, under warm summer stars, with crickets chirping gently into the dusk. But no matter how your mind tries to soften the edges, the moldy straw scratches back, reminding you where you truly are. Morning will come, the candle will gutter out, and your name may echo down that corridor next. The candle burned down to a smoking stub long before dawn, leaving the prison corridor in damp darkness. Your cramped muscles ache as the cell door creaks open and guards bellow names into the gloom. You flinch each time their boots stomp closer, heart clenching like a fist around your ribs. Today, however, your name isn't called. Not yet. Instead, hours later, you hear it spoken in a flat monotone as you chew a stale crust of bread. You're dragged up by the elbow and marched out into the gray morning drizzle. Outside, a row of barefoot sans-culottes wait for the day's spectacle. Their woolen caps droop with rain, but their eyes gleam with that eager, almost giddy curiosity people reserve for witnessing others' doom. As you're marched down Rue Saint-Antoine, a knot of market women shout crude insults at you, voices sharpened by years of hunger and fear. They call you aristocrat filth, though your linen trousers are as ragged as theirs now. A mainstream historical fact is that these sans-culottes, literally without knee breeches, named for their working-class trousers instead of aristocratic silk breeches, formed the militant backbone of the revolution. Their ferocity toppled kings, but their poverty remained unchanged. One woman steps forward and spits near your feet. Another cackles and lifts her skirt slightly, flashing you muddy ankles in mock seduction. Humiliation becomes your final garment. Your wrists are bound before you with coarse rope, chafing your raw skin with each jolt. Someone flicks the back of your head and laughs as you stumble forward. The drizzle turns to proper rain, cold pinpricks against your scalp. Your hair mats down around your face, dripping into your eyes until the world becomes a watery blur. You blink hard, clearing your vision just in time to see a group of boys dart out from an alley, shrieking with glee. They carry sticks and poke at the prisoners in front of you like children tormenting frogs. One jabs you in the thigh and yells, "Traitor!" before sprinting off, his friends hooting behind him. A fringe tidbit is that some children became so obsessed with executions that they followed tumbrils daily, chanting insults and memorizing last words to repeat them at home as grisly playground games. Your stomach twists as a wave of nausea rises from your chest. The smell of sweat, rotting refuse, and wet wool from the crowd swirls around you in cloying clouds. A woman in a red tricolor cockade shouts that she hopes the blade sticks halfway down your neck so they can hack the rest off slowly. Another man laughs and claps her on the back like she's just told the best tavern joke in Paris. An open scholarly debate circles whether these public humiliations genuinely empowered the poor or simply replaced one cruelty with another. Some historians argue that revolutionary justice blurred into sadistic theater, terror justified as virtue. You trip on a loose cobblestone, knees cracking hard against the wet street. The guard yanks you up by your bindings, and the rope cuts deeper into your wrists. Your hands are slick with rain and blood now, though you barely register the sting. All you hear is the steady rumble of the crowd, low as thunder before a summer storm, broken by shrill jeers. Your legs feel boneless as you're marched up the wooden steps onto the execution platform. People press close to the scaffold, necks craned for a better view. Their breath mists in the cool air. You notice a woman selling roasted chestnuts near the back, and for a fleeting moment, all you want in the world is a single warm chestnut, sweet and smoky on your tongue. But instead, you stand trembling, ropes biting your wrists, as the crowd roars and laughs, stripping the last shreds of dignity from your shaking body before the blade does the rest. You stand on trembling legs, staring at the massive wooden frame towering above you. Rain drips from its crossbeam onto the executioner's stained coat. The guillotine blade itself is hidden inside the heavy angled housing, but you can hear it, a faint metallic squeak as it slides up and down for testing. The executioner hums under his breath as he oils the track with quick practice swipes of his rag. You realize with a cold lurch in your stomach that his job is routine, like a baker dusting flour on fresh loaves. They pull you forward to the plank. Your knees nearly buckle as they untie your wrists. For one dizzying instant, your hands are free, and you imagine sprinting off into the silent crowd. But guards grip your arms tightly and shove you down. Your chin hits the damp wood with a hollow thud, sending sparks of pain flickering across your vision. They fasten the neck brace around your throat, pressing your cheek flat against the plank. You feel splinters digging into your skin as the world tilts sideways. A mainstream historical fact is that Dr. Joseph Ignace Guillotin originally proposed this machine as a humane alternative to hanging, beheading by sword, or breaking on the wheel. He believed that equal death by swift blade upheld revolutionary ideals. Whether that ever comforted the condemned is another matter entirely. Your pulse hammers so loudly you can barely hear the executioner step away. For a moment, all that exists is the acrid smell of metal oil, the distant roar of the crowd, and the rasping sobs of the prisoner before you. Then silence falls like a wet blanket. You realize the blade is poised just above your exposed neck. Your arms tremble, nails scraping helplessly against the plank. You wonder how much it will hurt. Will you even feel it? Some surgeons claim the brain remains conscious for several seconds after decapitation, seeing and hearing everything in that terrifying limbo. It's still an open scholarly debate today. The executioner gives the rope a sharp tug. You hear a clack, a rush of air, and a wet, meaty thud. The crowd erupts with savage cheers as the head is lifted high by its greasy hair, dripping onto the scaffold boards. The body beside you twitches twice before lying still, blood pooling beneath the stump. The warm coppery stench floods your nostrils, mixing with bile rising in your throat. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some people believed the guillotine blade had moods. If it squeaked or stuck slightly, it meant death would be painful or clumsy. On lucky days, they whispered. The blade sang like a violin string and ended life in a merciful instant. Your eyes blur with tears as the assistants roll the headless corpse away and mop the plank quickly. One turns to you and nods. It's your turn. Your turn. You feel them push your shoulders down firmly. The damp wood is cool against your cheek. You try to remember your mother's face, her voice, the smell of her hair when she hugged you as a child. But all you can see is gray sky above, and all you can hear is the whisper of the blade being hauled up again for you. For a heartbeat, you almost laugh. You think, well, at least I won't be late for work tomorrow. But no laughter escapes your dry throat, only a small, strangled whimper as the blade shudders into place above your exposed neck. waiting for the executioner's hand to flick you out of existence forever. Your heartbeat thunders in your ears as you kneel there, waiting for the final flick of the executioner's hand. But just as the rope tightens, a guard steps forward, checks a paper with your name, and barks an order. They haul you back onto shaky legs. Confusion flickers through you. You're not spared, not yet. Instead, they shove you off the scaffold and back into the holding line. Turns out your official execution time is delayed until after the bread rations are distributed. Yes, bread comes before death in revolutionary Paris. You're herded down into a courtyard ringed with stone walls and lined with filthy barrels of rainwater. A rickety cart stands nearby, piled high with crusty brown loaves. The smell nearly buckles your knees, sour, yeasty warmth, mingled with the faint aroma of roasted grain. It's the first time in days you've smelled anything resembling fresh bread. A mainstream historical fact is that bread shortages were one of the main sparks of the revolution itself. For centuries, French peasants spent up to 80% of their daily wages on bread alone. During the worst shortages of the Terror, many survived on tiny rations of coarse rye and barley loaves, laced with powdered sawdust to stretch supplies. You're given half a loaf. Its crust is rock hard, and your teeth jar painfully as you tear off a bite. Inside, the crumb is gray and damp, smelling faintly of mold. Still, you chew each mouthful slowly, letting it dissolve into gummy paste on your tongue. Around you, other prisoners munch in silence, eyes hollow and unfocused. There's no chatter, no murmured hopes of rescue, just the rhythmic gnawing of dying men and women, like mice working at stale rinds in a dark cellar. A quirky fringe tidbit is that bakers caught hoarding grain during the revolution could be guillotined for treason against the people. Some were dragged straight from their ovens to the scaffold, flour still dusted across their aprons. You choke slightly as a crumb lodges in your dry throat. Swallowing hard, you look up at the guards pacing along the courtyard perimeter. Their eyes are sharp with suspicion. They watch each loaf handed out, each bite swallowed, as though any of you might smuggle an uprising inside a hunk of rye. An open scholarly debate persists on whether the bread crisis was purely a product of poor harvests, or whether market speculators and political sabotage deepened shortages to fuel revolutionary anger. Some argue it was both. Nature's failure twisted by human greed into the perfect storm. You tear off another bite, your gums throbbing where the crust scraped them raw. Rain drips steadily from the eaves above, tapping onto your shoulders and soaking into your shirt. The bread turns soggy in your palm, but you force it down anyway. Even if death waits a few hours away, your body still craves life's simple fuel. You chew and swallow, each movement mechanical, empty, necessary. A small brown sparrow hops along the courtyard wall, pecking crumbs from beneath prisoners' feet. Its feathers are fluffed against the drizzle, and it cocks its head at you with bright black eyes before fluttering away to freedom. Your heart clenches at its effortless escape. You're so hungry, you almost resent the tiny bird stealing your final meal's crumbs. At last, the guards begin calling names again. You rise slowly, knees stiff, clutching the remains of your bread. The crust scrapes your skin as you tuck it inside your shirt for later. If there is a later. Your legs shake with exhaustion and hunger as you're marched back to the scaffold. Your jaw aches from chewing stale crust, and the sour smell of moldy bread clings to your breath. As you trudge forward, you realize bread may have fueled this revolution, but it will never save you. Hunger always wins in the end, one way or another. They march you through rain-slick streets back toward the looming court buildings. Your wet shoes squelch with each step, raw skin rubbing against rough seams. Up ahead, through a colonnade of gray stone arches, flickers the dim glow of lanterns. This is the Committee of Public Safety headquarters. You're shoved through a low iron door into a cramped room lined with dark oak panels and cluttered desks stacked with papers. Candle stubs gutter in their holders, throwing trembling shadows across the walls. A mainstream historical fact is that this committee effectively governed revolutionary France during the Terror. Its 12 members wielded near absolute power, signing death warrants daily for those deemed enemies of liberty. Chaired by men like Robespierre, Saint-Just, and Couthon, it blended executive, legislative, and judicial control into one unstoppable force. Inside, scribes sit, hunched over parchment, scribbling names into enormous ledgers by candlelight. Their quills scratch steadily, the only sound aside from your own ragged breathing. One clerk picks up a half-empty wine bottle and drinks straight from the neck before returning to his paperwork with bleary determination. You realize, with a shiver of horror, that your life or death may hang on the flick of his drunken wrist. A guard pushes you forward. Your shoulders ache from hours of confinement and marching, but you force yourself to stand upright as a stern man with powdered hair looks up from his papers. He scans your face, then your filthy clothes, then glances at a small file in front of him. Your name is written there in spidery black ink. He sniffs disdainfully and mutters to his neighbor, too quiet for you to hear. You imagine him saying, "Another worthless traitor to add to tomorrow's list." A fringe tidbit is that secret lists of enemies were sometimes compiled at night, after long wine-fueled debates, with committee members scribbling down names of anyone who sounded vaguely counter-revolutionary. Some historians claim personal grudges often masqueraded as patriotic justice. He dips his quill and scrawls something briskly in your file. You wonder if he just condemned you or spared you, but he gives no sign. He sets the quill down, pinches the bridge of his nose, and waves you away without a word. The guard grabs your elbow, pulling you back down the hall lined with iron-barred cells. An open scholarly debate remains whether the Committee of Public Safety truly believed it was protecting revolutionary ideals, or whether power's corrosive intoxication simply devoured their humanity. Perhaps some argue it was both. Perhaps idealism becomes its own poison when mixed with fear. You're marched into a narrow holding cell lined with straw mats. Other prisoners sit slumped against the damp walls, staring into nothing. The flickering torchlight reveals bruised faces, sunken eyes, trembling hands picking at splinters in the floorboards. No one speaks. Words are useless here. A man near the corner sobs softly into his folded arms, each breath hitching like a dying bellows. As you lower yourself to the floor, straw crackles beneath your weight. The guard slams the iron grate shut and trudges away down the corridor. You stare at the mold-blackened stone across from you, feeling your pulse drum beneath your raw, rope-burned wrist. Your name now lies inked within secret files, scrawled by exhausted men half-drunk on cheap Bordeaux and half-drunk on power. Their signatures carry your life within curling loops of black script. You close your eyes and rest your head back against the cold wall, listening to the distant squeak of the guillotine being tested for tomorrow's executions. For a moment, you almost laugh. Your fate now sits in a folder somewhere on a candlelit desk, smeared with a drop of sour red wine. Morning light seeps through the high-barred window, thin and colorless. You sit on the damp straw, staring at your blistered hands. When the guards come again, they call your name without looking at you, as if you're already a ghost. You're yanked up, shackles clinking, and marched outside into the crisp dawn air. The streets are quieter today. Thin clouds drift across a pale sky, and the breeze carries a biting chill that cuts through your threadbare shirt. As you approach the Place de la Révolution, the smell hits you first, a coppery tang of blood mingled with wet sawdust. Workers are scrubbing the wooden platform around the guillotine, water sloshing red across the cobblestones. It runs in thin streams down the stone grooves and into storm drains leading toward the Seine. A mainstream historical fact is that each morning, execution assistants scrubbed down the scaffold to prepare for the day's killings. Blood mixed with rainwater and washing buckets would stain the streets a rusty pink, and vendors complained about the stench scaring away customers. You're lined up with others awaiting execution. The woman in front of you hums softly to herself, her lips twitching with nervous half-smiles. Her hair is pinned back with a broken tortoiseshell comb, and her ragged dress is cinched with a fraying blue ribbon. You notice how her feet tremble with each note. Nearby, a man vomits onto the boards, splattering bile and watery breadcrumbs across his shoes. The executioner glares at him with cold annoyance before signaling the workers to splash another bucket over the mess. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some believed washing away blood daily was vital to prevent plague or sickness from spreading through the dense crowds. Others thought it merely cleansed the scaffold's bad luck, ensuring the blade fell true without snagging on cursed gore. Your eyes drift to a patch of congealed blood clinging stubbornly between two planks. Flies buzz lazily above it, and you imagine their tiny feet skating across its surface, tasting death with every step. You look away quickly, bile burning your throat. The executioner tests the blade's latch again, producing a metallic shiver that rattles down your spine. He adjusts his red sash, wipes his brow with a grimy handkerchief, then leans against the guillotine frame to sip from a dented pewter cup. You wonder what he drinks each morning. Coffee? Wine? Something stronger to erase the memory of the hundreds he's dispatched? An open scholarly debate persists over whether executioners felt moral guilt or simply viewed their role as a necessary civic duty. Some records suggest executioner families carried generational shame, while others reveal they lived comfortably from state stipends and bribes. A breeze flutters your prison shift around your ankles, and goosebumps rise along your skin. The smell of blood and damp wood fills your nostrils with every shaky breath. The workers toss bucket after bucket across the scaffold, scrubbing harder with each splash until the stains fade to dull smears. Water sloshes down the wooden steps, mingling with dirt to form gritty pink puddles that trickle along the street's gutter. You notice a vendor setting up her stall across the square, arranging small cloth bundles on a low table. Red radishes, yellow onions, and mottled green pears lie in neat rows. Life carries on as usual. Breakfast shopping while executions unfold yards away. Your stomach growls softly at the sight of the pear's bruised sweetness. A guard nudges you forward. The humming woman is led up the steps, her bare feet silent on the wet wood. The executioner barely glances at her as he positions her neck beneath the blade. The workers pause their scrubbing to watch. You wonder if the platform will ever be clean again. Perhaps some stains never wash away, no matter how many buckets of cold river water you pour over them. You're moved up the line as the humming woman's life ends in a swift, metallic thud. Her head tumbles into the wicker basket below, hair matted with drizzle, eyes still open in that blank, stunned finality. The workers drag her body aside, leaving a slick smear of blood and rainwater on the planks. The next prisoner is already kneeling before she's fully removed. Efficiency is the revolution's quiet cruelty. A mainstream historical fact is that by 1794, the guillotine had become such a routine mechanism of death that people called it the national razor. Its inventor, Dr. Guillotin, ironically opposed the death penalty altogether, but proposed the device as a quick and egalitarian method should execution remain law. As you shuffle forward, your gaze lands on the blade itself. It gleams dully beneath the gray sky, streaked with faint rust along its upper edges. You've heard stories whispered in prison cells, tales of heads blinking and lips moving after decapitation. Some say a severed head sees its own body slumped to the boards, feels the rush of air across its cooling cheek, and tries to scream. It's a fringe tidbit, of course, dismissed by many scientists as myth. Still, the idea clings to your spine like a cold thumb pressing down hard. You reach the foot of the scaffold and glance up at the executioner. His face is blank, eyes shadowed beneath his leather cap. He adjusts the blade latch again with practiced movements. A scholar in the crowd jots notes into a small ledger, observing each drop and measuring time to death for his ongoing study. Whether decapitated heads remain conscious for seconds or merely twitch reflexively is still an open scholarly debate. Some argue that electrical impulses cause these facial spasms. Others believe brief lucidity remains, a trapped final horror within an already dying mind. They call your name. The syllables slice the morning air with clinical detachment. You climb the slick wooden steps, feet slipping slightly on blood-washed planks. At the top, the executioner's assistant gestures for you to kneel. You lower yourself mechanically, knees pressing into wet grooves carved by countless victims before you. Your cheek lies cold against the plank. You smell damp wood, iron filings, and stale sweat. Rain drips from the executioner's sleeve as he checks your collar placement. A soft murmur rises from the crowd as the scholar continues scribbling furiously. You wonder if your final seconds will become a neat footnote in his treatise. Perhaps he'll write, Subject 47, male, mid-20s, filthy shirt, slight tremor in hands, guillotine drop clean, no detectable speech post-decapitation. You almost smile at the absurdity. Almost. A quirky historical rumor says that if the blade squeaks on its way down, your soul becomes trapped beneath the scaffold forever, haunting the oak beams until someone dies in your exact place. The hinge above you squeaks faintly as the blade resets, and your chest tightens despite yourself. The executioner steps back. You feel his shadow recede across your shoulders. The rain falls harder now, cold droplets splashing your neck. Every sense sharpens painfully. The plank splinters bite your cheek. You smell old blood soaked deep into the wood grain. The crowd's shuffle and coughs echo faintly in your ears. You hear the blade rise, metal scraping against metal in a harsh hiss. Then, silence. You hold your breath, waiting for gravity to choose its moment. For a fleeting instant, you think of warm buttered bread, of your mother's hair braided with blue ribbon, of the sparrow hopping freely in the courtyard. But the blade does not care for memories. It cares only for its next swift cut. Your name is crossed off the waiting list for now, and you're dragged back down the scaffold steps by two guards gripping your elbows. The blade still gleams above, dripping with the humming woman's final warmth. They shove you into a small stone chamber behind the platform, its heavy oak door slamming shut with a muffled boom. You blink in the flickering candlelight and realize where you are, the condemned prisoner's feast room. Despite the name, there's no grandeur here. A plank table runs down the center, lined with battered pewter cups, chipped ceramic bowls, and crusty bread loaves stacked like bricks. Half a wheel of pale cheese sits sweating in the humid gloom. A dark green bottle of cheap country wine rests at the head of the table, uncorked and breathing sour fumes into the stale air. A mainstream historical fact is that, on certain days, prisoners scheduled for execution were given a communal meal known as the Last Supper or Red Banquet. Some feasts were meager, black bread and onion soup, while others, especially for nobles, included roasted fowl, fresh cheeses, and claret to dull their final fears. You sink onto a rough wooden bench between two men in torn waistcoats. They nod grimly at you before returning to their silent chewing. Across the table, a young woman with tangled dark hair sips wine straight from the bottle, wiping her mouth with the back of her trembling hand. Her eyes are glassy with tears or drink. You can't tell which. You reach for a hunk of bread and tear off a bite. It's hard, stale at the crust, but within is a faint sweetness of wheat that reminds you of festival days in your village, long before the tricolor flag fluttered above every street. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some prisoners joked loudly during these feasts, composing ribald songs or mock toasts to Madame Guillotine. One legend claims that a condemned poet recited verses about death's cold embrace until his voice cracked with laughter. The young woman drains the wine bottle and sets it down with a shaky thud. "Who's next?" she asks in a hoarse whisper. No one replies. You chew another mouthful of bread slowly, trying to ignore the sour taste of mold along its crust. A guard walks around the room, slamming his baton against the table to break the silence. "Eat quickly," he barks. "They're nearly ready for you." An open scholarly debate remains over whether these final banquets were acts of mercy to calm the condemned, or a calculated spectacle to normalize daily executions for the public. Some argue it was both: comfort for the dying, reassurance for the living that justice moves swiftly and politely. The cheese is soft and slightly rancid at the edges. You cut a sliver with a dull knife and place it on your tongue, letting its creamy saltiness dissolve into the bitter taste of your fear. Across from you, an old man raises his pewter cup in a trembling toast. "To tomorrow's breakfast," he says with a wry smile, though his eyes shimmer wetly in the candle glow. Someone lets out a small snort of laughter at his grim humor. It ripples around the table like a faint echo, but quickly falls silent again as reality thickens in the room like smoke. The door bangs open, startling your heart into your throat. A guard begins calling names from a parchment list, voice flat and casual as if announcing loaves ready at a bakery. The young woman clutches her stomach with a strangled sob as her name echoes in the candlelit chamber. She rises on shaking legs, wiping wine from her chin, and walks past you, leaving only the scent of sour grapes and fear in her wake. You swallow your last bite of bread and grip the edge of the table with trembling fingers, feeling each groove worn into the wood by generations of desperate hands before you. Your name remains uncalled for now. The guards march you out into a narrow stone passage, torchlight flickering along the damp walls. Your stomach churns with sour wine and the stale cheese as you stumble behind them. They push open a heavy wooden door, and you find yourself in a small courtyard behind the prison, lined with broken barrels and stacks of rotting straw. Children stand scattered along the perimeter, their faces streaked with dirt, eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and glee. They can't be more than 8 or 9 years old. Some hold sticks, others clutch torn cloth dolls or half-gnawed crusts of bread. One little boy in a filthy red cap whispers something to his friend before darting up to a guard, tugging at his sleeve urgently. A mainstream historical fact is that during the Revolution, children often acted as informal spies for the sans-culottes committees, listening at tavern doors or eavesdropping in markets, then reporting counter-revolutionary whispers in return for sweets or praise. You watch as the guard crouches down to listen to the boy's fast, excited whispers. The boy's friend shifts from foot to foot, her bare toes black with street grime. When they finish, the guard ruffles the boy's hair and slips something into his palm, a square of coarse brown sugar wrapped in wax paper. The boy's face lights up and he scampers back to his friends, proudly unwrapping his prize. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some revolutionary spies carried pocket notebooks filled with childish doodles alongside traitors' names. Since few were fully literate, officials learned to interpret these scribbles like secret ciphers. You feel bile rising in your throat as another girl points at you and giggles behind her ragged sleeve. Her teeth are small and yellowed like old piano keys. She whispers something to the boy with the sugar cube, and they both laugh. For a moment you see yourself through their eyes, a filthy prisoner, shaking with fear, shackled and half-starved, just another day's entertainment. An open scholarly debate lingers over whether these children were manipulated by revolutionary fervor or simply desperate to survive in a world of shortages and guillotines. Some argue they became cruel out of necessity. Others believe innocence curdled under terror's constant drip. A guard shouts your name again, snapping you from your frozen trance. They shove you toward a wagon loaded with straw bales and rope coils. Inside, a cluster of prisoners sit huddled, shivering in thin linen shifts despite the rising sun. You climb up, your shackles clanking against the iron step, and settle onto a bale that scratches your thighs through your ragged trousers. The children gather closer as the driver snaps the reins and the wagon jolts forward. A few run alongside, laughing and shouting insults. "Traitor!" a boy yells, waving his stick like a saber. Another girl cups her hands around her mouth and squeals, "Off with your head! Off with your head!" Their laughter rings out across the gray stone courtyard, echoing off the prison walls like a nursery rhyme twisted into mockery. You stare at them through the iron bars of the wagon, your pulse thudding dully beneath your collarbone. Their thin, bright faces blur into the mist as the wagon rattles away down the cobbled lane. The thought gnaws at you, hollow and cold. Even the children want you dead. Even the children find your terror entertaining. The wagon rattles through the muddy lanes of Paris, iron-rimmed wheels jolting over every loose cobblestone. Your back aches from the rough straw bale pressing against your spine, but you cling to its prickly surface for balance. Ahead, mist curls through the narrow streets, swirling around crooked wooden shop signs and sagging brick chimneys. Your fellow prisoners sit silent, their faces pale and slack with exhaustion. The driver cracks his whip lazily against the mule's flank, humming a slow tavern tune under his breath. You listen to the melody, imagining a warm hearth and spiced wine in a tavern's smoky glow, though you know you'll never hear music like that again. A mainstream historical fact is that the terror's mass executions often required tumbrils and carts to transport dozens at once. These processions became daily spectacles. Residents watched them roll by from windows, half horrified, half bored, sipping watered wine as death passed beneath their flower boxes. You grip the wooden slats of the cart side, feeling each splinter dig into your palms as you scan the watching faces along Rue de Rivoli. An old woman peers out through lace curtains, her wrinkled lips pursed in grim approval. Two boys sit straddling a second-story windowsill, legs dangling as they wave and shout jeers at your wagon. A vendor hauling baskets of green cabbages pauses to cross himself quickly, eyes darting away before resuming his route to market. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some prisoners in these tumbrils reportedly sang drinking songs or revolutionary anthems to mock their own doom, their voices weaving between sobs and bitter laughter until the crowd joined in, turning death into carnival. Your cart jolts sharply around a corner, nearly pitching you onto the filthy, straw-littered floor. A young man next to you clutches his stomach, fighting back a retch. He wipes his mouth with trembling fingers, eyes wide with tearful terror. You wonder what crime brought him here. A careless complaint about bread prices, a priest hidden in his attic, or simply a neighbor's whispered lie? An open scholarly debate persists over whether most executions under the terror targeted genuine counter-revolutionaries or served as randomized terror to paralyze public dissent. Some historians argue that by 1794, even revolutionary loyalty offered no protection from the blade's hunger. A cool breeze ripples down the cart's path, carrying the pungent smell of butcher stalls, raw offal, blood-soaked straw, salt-brined hides stretched on hooks. Your stomach turns at the mingled odors. The sun is rising higher now, its weak warmth failing to cut through the damp Parisian chill. Ahead, the twin towers of the conciergerie loom into view, stone walls slick with overnight drizzle. Your cart halts before its black iron gates, and the driver leans back with a sigh, wiping sweat from his brow despite the morning cold. Guards unlatch the gate and bark orders at your group. You stumble down from the cart, feet slapping the wet stones, shackles rattling like sinister wind chimes. The young man vomits noisily into the gutter beside you, and the guards wrinkle their noses in disgust. They march you into the main courtyard, past prisoners sweeping puddles of blood-tinged rainwater toward clogged drains. You hear the distant, rhythmic hammering of carpenters repairing scaffold beams. Executions never paused for long, and maintenance was constant to keep up with demand. You step over a wide puddle, reflecting the pale dawn sky, and catch your warped reflection within it, hollow cheeks, bruised eyes, and straw fragments clinging to your tangled hair. You barely recognize the trembling shadows staring back at you as they lead you onward through the echoing halls toward whatever tribunal or blade awaits next. They usher you into a dim stone corridor lined with narrow wooden benches. Prisoners sit hunched in silence, their breath clouding the cold air. At the far end stands a door carved with the emblem of the Revolutionary Tribunal, twin fasces crowned by the Phrygian cap. Two guards flank it, muskets slung across their chests, boots planted wide. You shuffle forward, shackles clinking, and take your place among the waiting. A mainstream historical fact is that the Revolutionary Tribunal, founded in 1793, processed thousands of accused citizens with astonishing speed. Trials often lasted mere minutes, verdicts predetermined, with defense lawyers providing little more than ceremonial speeches before the inevitable condemnation. Your eyes drift across the silent queue. A woman in a threadbare blue shawl clutches a baby wrapped in rags. The infant dozes, face flushed with fever, tiny fists curling against his chest. You wonder if they will execute her today, or send her back to her cell to watch her child starve first. Further down, a gaunt priest fingers a wooden rosary, lips moving silently around each bead. His eyes, sunk deep in dark hollows, remain fixed on some vision beyond these damp walls. A quirky fringe tidbit is that rosaries were often confiscated, so prisoners carved secret beads into the seams of their clothing hems, tracing them in hidden prayer as they waited to hear their fate. The line inches forward. Your stomach growls softly, still sour from stale bread and fear. Guards move along the benches, calling names in bored tones. You try to listen for yours, but your mind feels sluggish, your thoughts drifting between each echoing footstep in the corridor. An open scholarly debate lingers over whether these rapid-fire trials were born purely from revolutionary fervor, or if desperation for control birthed them. Some historians argue the tribunal's purpose had shifted entirely by the terror's peak, from justice to an industrialized purge. Finally, your name rings out. The guard's voice is clipped and indifferent as he gestures you forward. You rise on unsteady legs, your shackles clanking with each step toward the tribunal door. As you pass the woman with the baby, her eyes flick up to meet yours, glassy and empty as winter pond ice. You try to hold her gaze, to offer some silent solidarity, but your own fear yanks your eyes back down to the worn stones beneath your feet. The guards push the heavy door open, and torchlight spills into the corridor. Inside, the tribunal chamber hums with a restless energy. A row of judges sits on a dais beneath the crimson drapery of the Republic. Their black robes hang heavy across their thin shoulders, white collars glowing in the dim light. Papers litter the benches before them, quills scratch steadily across parchment. No one looks up as you enter. Your heart thunders painfully as they call your name again, confirming your identity. One judge glances at a clerk who reads aloud the accusation in a flat monotone. Citizen is charged with counter-revolutionary speech, hoarding grain, and betrayal of the Republic. You blink, stunned. Grain hoarding? You barely ate enough to survive, let alone hoard. But the judge doesn't pause for your confusion. Do you deny these charges? He asks, eyes fixed impassively on your filth-streaked shirt. Your mouth opens, but your tongue feels thick and dry. Words catch in your throat like sour crumbs. You manage a hoarse whisper. I have nothing to hoard. The judge raises one eyebrow slightly, then glances at his clerk. Death by guillotine. Next case. Your knees nearly buckle. 2 guards seize your elbows before you collapse entirely, dragging you back toward the door. Behind you, another name is called. Another life is shuffled forward into the tribunal's maw without pause. You're half carried back into the corridor, heart slamming wildly against your ribs. The chill stone walls blur past your vision. The verdict hammers through your skull with each thudding heartbeat. Death, death, death. They haul you down another set of narrow, twisting stairs. The walls slick with moss and torch soot. At the bottom, you emerge into a holding chamber deep below street level. Dim lanterns flicker from iron hooks, illuminating rows of hunched prisoners chained to rings set into the walls. The air is heavy with a sour scent of sweat, urine, and damp limestone. Your lungs tighten with each shallow breath. A mainstream historical fact is that beneath the conciergerie ran labyrinthine cellars and chambers. Some served as wine storage before the revolution, but were converted into holding cells for condemned prisoners, their cool darkness hiding the Republic's human harvest from public view until execution dawn. A guard drags you to an empty ring and fastens your wrist chain to it with a heavy iron lock. The metal is cold against your raw skin. You slide down to the gritty floor, knees bent awkwardly, your back pressed against rough stone. The lantern glow casts your shadow long across the damp floor, merging with those of dozens of silent strangers. Across from you sits an elderly man in a wool cap pulled low over wispy gray hair. His eyes are closed, lips moving in soundless prayer or delirium. Next to him, a teenage boy picks at a scab on his wrist until it bleeds, smearing the dark streak onto his tattered sleeve. Further down the wall, a woman rocks gently, cradling nothing in her empty arms as though nursing an invisible child. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some prisoners, in these final hours underground, scrawled tiny graffiti prayers onto walls with bits of broken pottery or bone. Scraps remain today. Rough crosses, lovers' initials, desperate final pleas etched into stone no visitor would ever see. You tilt your head back against the wall and close your eyes, exhaustion rolling over you in sluggish, heavy waves. But sleep refuses to come. The clang of shackles, the moaning of prisoners in fevered dreams, and the distant rhythmic hammering above keep your nerves taut. Somewhere beyond these walls, the carpenters continue building new scaffold beams. Life and death blend into industry. An open scholarly debate continues over whether these final cellars were intentionally torturous, designed to break spirits before execution, or merely pragmatic overflow as arrests surged beyond any planned capacity. Some argue it was both. Cruelty and necessity mingled in the Republic's darkest hours. You open your eyes and stare into the gloom. Across the chamber, a rat scuttles along the far wall, nosing at a crust of stale bread dropped by another prisoner. Its tail flicks across the damp stone as it sniffs eagerly. You watch it for a long time, envying its freedom to scurry away at will. A muffled scream echoes from somewhere down another tunnel, followed by sobbing that fades into ragged coughs. No one stirs. Everyone here knows there is no escape, no rescue coming through the moss-choked stones. There's only time to wait, to endure each slow drip from the leaking ceiling, each draft of mildewed air snaking across your ankles. You rest your head on your knees and let your eyes drift closed again. If sleep comes, perhaps you'll dream of a day long ago. Sunlit fields beyond your village, warm bread cooling on a windowsill, your mother calling your name softly as birdsong rose with the dawn. But the damp stone bites into your bones. The iron cuff pinches your wrist, and dreams remain locked far beyond this final cage. Morning arrives as nothing more than a faint silver glow seeping through cracks in the cellar door. You wake to the jangle of chains as prisoners are pulled to their feet one by one, guards calling names from a crumpled parchment list. Your back aches from sleeping against stone, and your tongue feels thick with thirst. When they finally bark your name, your knees nearly give out from the effort of rising. They unlock your wrist shackle and yank you into the corridor. A chill draft whispers along the mossy walls, raising goosebumps on your grimy skin. You're marched single file with the others up a winding staircase, Emerging into a wide antechamber lit by flickering torches, the noise outside seeps in. Market vendors hawking onions and garlic, the low clatter of wagon wheels, the distant toll of morning bells. A mainstream historical fact is that executions were often scheduled for mid-morning to early afternoon, giving citizens ample time to gather and witness justice served before returning to their daily trade. They lead you through the great black iron gates and down the Rue Saint-Honoré toward the Place de la Révolution. Crowds part along the cobbled street, their eyes following the chain of prisoners in solemn curiosity. Some clutch their children close, whispering warnings to behave. Others stare with blank faces, as though watching rain slide down window panes. A few raise clenched fists, shouting revolutionary slogans that ripple above your heads before dissolving into morning mist. A quirky fringe tidbit is that fashionable Parisians once attended guillotine executions as daily entertainment, carrying opera glasses to observe facial expressions. Some women even wore guillotine ribbons, red velvet tied around the neck to mimic a fresh slice, a macabre trend now mostly forgotten. Your bare feet slap against damp cobblestones, every impact jarring your teeth. Ahead, the guillotine looms tall and dark against the pale dawn sky. Its blade glints dully, polished for today's work. Blood-stained straw surrounds its base in a wide halo. Flies already gathering in the morning chill. An open scholarly debate persists over whether public executions truly deterred crime or simply numbed citizens to violence. Some argue that so much daily bloodshed eroded moral boundaries, normalizing cruelty as part of civic life. They herd you into a fenced holding pen beside the scaffold. The boards are slick with overnight rain, and the sour smell of old blood clings to every plank. You grip the wooden railing, feeling splinters pierce your palm, and look out across the square. Vendors peddle bread rolls and chestnuts from wicker baskets. Children skip stones into the gutter puddles. A woman adjusts her bonnet with delicate fingers, her eyes never leaving the raised platform. Guards bark orders. The first prisoner is led up the steps. You watch him kneel, see the executioner adjust the collar brace, and hear the swift metallic thud of the blade falling. A burst of cheers rises from the crowd as the assistants lift his severed head by the hair, displaying it in a grim ritual of justice before tossing it into a wicker basket lined with sodden rags. Your heart thumps wildly, every beat a hammer against your ribs. You taste bile and old bread at the back of your throat. The next name is called. The woman beside you sobs quietly, pressing shaking fingers to her lips as she steps forward. You grip the railing harder, nails biting into the rough wood, trying to anchor yourself against the storm inside your chest. But nothing will stop what comes next. Nothing ever does. Soon your name will echo across this damp square, rolling into the chill morning air like a final empty prayer. They call your name. The sound slides through the clamor of the square with a cold finality, cutting deeper than any blade. You release the wooden railing, your fingers trembling as you step forward. The guards grip your elbows firmly, guiding you up the scaffold's slick wooden steps. Each footfall echoes into your bones, hollow and rhythmic, like a funeral drum in a silent forest. A mainstream historical fact is that the scaffold was designed with grooves and channels to funnel blood efficiently into straw piles below. Every component of the guillotine was engineered for swift, clean executions. The Enlightenment's mechanical mercy, though it never felt merciful to those kneeling beneath its blade. At the top, you smell fresh sawdust scattered over yesterday's bloodstains. The executioner's assistant nods at you briskly, gesturing for you to kneel. You lower yourself onto the wet planks. They pull your collar down roughly, bearing the back of your neck to the cold morning air. Your knees press against the wood, splinters biting through thin fabric into skin. Rain drips steadily from the crossbeam above, falling in cold, stinging droplets onto your exposed nape. A quirky fringe tidbit is that some executioners kept locks of hair or torn shirt fragments from notable prisoners as grisly trophies, hidden in private chests alongside their ceremonial sashes and payment ledgers. Your cheek rests against damp oak. You see the blurred shape of the crowd through the scaffold's side railings. A sea of shawls, tricorn hats, and pale faces. Somewhere beyond them rises the spire of Saint-Roch, barely visible through the drifting mist. A soft breeze carries the smell of roasting chestnuts from a vendor's brazier, mingling with the iron scent of fresh blood. An open scholarly debate remains over whether those final seconds under the blade were experienced as terror or as a blank, peaceful release. Some argue the brain, flooded with survival chemicals, processes only unthinking instinct. Others believe the condemned's final clarity is so sharp it sears an eternal mark into memory's darkness. You hear the blade ratchet up, its iron weight clicking against grooves in a rising metallic chant. Each notch echoes through your ribs. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, fogging the polished wood before your eyes. You think of bread fresh from your mother's oven, the soft weight of your childhood cat on your lap by the hearth, and the distant summer field where you once lay watching larks wheel across an endless blue. The crowd holds its collective breath. The executioner checks the latch one final time, his leather-gloved fingers moving with practiced calm. Rain patters against the scaffold roof. A baby cries somewhere beyond the fencing. Your pulse hammers wildly in your throat. Then suddenly, everything goes quiet. Even your fear seems to pause, suspended in a single trembling instant of cold morning light. The latch clicks, thud. Everything ends. The guillotine stands silent now, its blade dripping slowly onto damp straw. The crowds disperse into the misty streets of Paris, footsteps fading into the hum of dawn. Gentle rain continues to fall, washing pale rivulets of blood from the planks down into the waiting gutters, where water carries them away toward the slow-moving Seine. Somewhere far from here, sparrows flutter along a quiet stone wall, pecking for crumbs in empty courtyards. The mist thickens, muffling the last clatter of cartwheels on distant cobbles. Everything softens into a gentle gray hush. Your breathing slows as you imagine yourself drifting beyond the scaffold's edge, carried out over mist-wrapped rooftops and silent bell towers, far from the chill wooden steps and iron blade. You float through quiet streets lined with shuttered windows, past flickering lanterns, beyond the pale sky's reach. There's no more rattling chain, no rough guard's shove, no final trembling prayer, only stillness now, deep and vast as sleep itself. Let your thoughts fade into this quiet gray expanse. Feel your muscles loosen, your eyelids grow heavy, your chest rise and fall in slow, steady rhythm. The city disappears, the blade disappears, and you're left with nothing but peaceful, drifting silence.